Hey everyone, my name is Jennifer Taylor, and today I will be presenting information on clinical psychologists. I chose clinical psychology because I know that they're able to work within the school system with, kids and students of all ages, and that's what I hope to do someday. All right, what is clinical psychology? Clinical psychologists are concerned with the assessment and treatment of various mental disorders and abnormal behaviors. This means that they're specially trained in assessment methods and tests, as well as psychotherapy, and they utilize these to create a comprehensive treatment plan that's best suited to the client. Clinical psychologists often adopt an eclectic approach to therapy, meaning that they draw from several different theoretical methods. Clinical psychologists also work with a diverse group of clients, ranging from individuals struggling with depression, anxiety, bipolar disorders, schizophrenia, personality disorders, to people struggling with addiction. They also work with marriage and family therapy, as well as specialized groups such as children and the elderly. What makes clinical psychology unique? I wrote here that they're kind of a jack of all trades. Clinical psychology is a specialized field within psychology, and then clinical psychologists usually specialize in an area. But just because they specialize in one area or a couple doesn't mean that they're limited to just that. So as you'll see in my interview with Dr. Weaver, she's a counselor at EOU, but she also has her own private practice. She also holds an administrative position at EOU. I should say that she specializes in marriage and family therapy. That's what her private practice is focused on. But on top of that, she's also a counselor for students at EOU, as well as holding an administrative position there as well. So I also found that it was really interesting that clinical psychology sort of took off and became more developed and relied upon during the two world wars. It was shown to be effective in treating soldiers suffering from shell shock, or what we would call post-traumatic stress disorder. So the demand for professionals being able to treat the returning soldiers after the wars really grew. And by 1950, the U.S. Veterans Administration set up a number of PhD programs, and more than half of these were awarded in clinical psychology. Approximately 40% of all doctoral degrees in psychology go to clinical psychologists, making it the most popular area of specialization. Alrighty, so the three programs, I found two PhD programs that were fairly local, one here in Oregon through OHSU and another one in my home state at Washington at Seattle Pacific University. And the third one that I found was a PsyD program, which is also an option at Midwestern University, which is located, or at least one of their campuses, the one that I looked at, was located in Downers Grove, Illinois. So the requirements. First and foremost, it should be noted that PhD programs are highly competitive and they're really hard to get into. Most PhD programs receive well over 200 applications, and they usually accept only about 2 to 10% of these. So that's literally like 4 to 20 people. So it's best to shop around and apply to several universities so that you can increase your chance of being accepted somewhere. All of these programs had, pretty much the same requirements with maybe a few exceptions here and there. They all require that you pass a criminal background check. They all require an undergraduate degree in psychology or a related field. They all want you to have a minimum GPA of 3.0 or higher. They all require that you pass the GRE, and then with OHSU they also require a GRE psychology exam score. Let me see here. Yes, they also require demonstration of previous work experience or volunteer work, extracurricular activities, anything like that within the healthcare industry, and they all have a $75 application fee. So the cost of these programs, OHSU charges $613 per credit, and there's about 9 to 12 credits per term for the PhD program, and overall you're looking at a 5-year program. So that based on 9 to 12 credits, that's anywhere from 88,000 to 110,000, give or take, a year. But their tuition sheet listed the cost for the PhD program at $70,045. And then obviously if you're a non-resident, it's going to be more. They charge $793 per credit. The kind of neat thing about OHSU though, and I'm not sure that if this is just particular to them or universities like them because they have the hospital right there, is that they guarantee full tuition coverage. So they cover your tuition fees, they cover health insurance for you and even your family. So like if you're married and have kids and you're trying to obtain your PhD, they cover that. And they also pay you an annual stipend of $30,000 a year. And that price, that's for the 2019-2020 school year. So I would imagine that figure might change over the years. The other two schools that I looked into, Seattle Pacific and Midwestern, did not offer any type of waiving of tuition or anything like that, or stipends. So definitely would be really nice to go to OHSU. Seattle Pacific charges $851 per credit, and they require 195 credits to complete the PhD program. So you're looking at $165,945 for the entire program. Midwestern University, they simply stated that they charge $33,768 per year, and it's a 5-year program. So you're looking at approximately $168,840 for the entire program. Their university also stated that tuition tends to increase by 3 to 5% each year. And then of course there's all of these universities charge roughly anywhere from like $2,000 upwards of $4,500 each year for additional expenses and fees that students might incur. The good news is that all of these universities offer financial aid and grants for their PhD programs. All right, the time requirement. Each of these schools require 5 years for the program. For a PhD or PsyD, it's going to be 5 years. The 5th year is usually your internship or residency, and that's usually completed at another university or, some other setting like a VA hospital or any other clinical or medical setting. The course schedule, as you can see, it's pretty intense and rigorous. Usually, if you're looking at a PhD or a PsyD, you will be expected to do a dissertation. And then, of course, your 5th year is usually internship or residency. I found Seattle Pacific University courses to be really unique because they're a Christian university. For me personally, that's not a determining factor for where I go or what I want to do, but I know for some people it is. I certainly grew up in a religious household, and I know that religion and mental health or mental illness were two entirely different things. So for me, it was just really interesting to see, an integration of those two things. When I interviewed Dr. Weaver, she had stated that she was Christian and that her faith was really important to her, and she wanted to be able to, bring that into her therapy. And she attended Azusa Pacific University in Southern California, and that is also a Christian university. So it's just really interesting to see that, that there's an integration of religion and science, really. So a couple of the classes that are offered at Seattle Pacific University for clinical psychology, one of them is Faith, Meaning, and Professional Foundations, Personhood. And this class explores the implications of a biblical anthropology, develops a theology of personhood, and encourages students in personal exploration of and engagement with these issues. There's academic conferences that also address specific issues that arise out of the content of other courses concurrently being taken by the student. Another one of their courses is Personhood, Psychological Disorder. This course will consider contemporary Christian conceptions of psychological disorders such as depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, and schizophrenia. Psychological research describing religious attitudes about mental illness from communities around the world will be reviewed. A theological framework relevant for the understanding of psychological distress will also be presented. Emphasis will be placed upon the understanding of suffering in the scriptures, its potential relation to the experience of mental disorder, and its depiction in the character of the suffering Savior. So I just found that really interesting. Job availability. Individuals can certainly find entry-level positions for clinical psychology if they have a master's degree, but it's definitely urged to obtain a doctoral degree. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics suggests a doctoral degree just to stay ahead of the competitive market. And the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics also projects a 14% employment increase through the year 2026 for clinical psychologists, which is faster than the average of all occupations. And this growth is, for the demand of psychological services in schools, hospitals, mental health facilities, other social service agencies. The number one career choice for clinical psychologists is to go into private practice. However, there's any number of organizations that you can work in, government agencies, veterans and military hospitals, drug rehabilitation and correctional facilities, elementary and secondary schools, colleges, universities, hospitals and medical clinics, and mental health hospitals and community centers. So definitely vast options. So the average income, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, the median annual income for clinical psychologists as of May of 2018, which is the most recent year that I could find, was $76,990. Not too shabby. So depending on where you work and your years of experience, that's going to affect your earnings. So obviously you're not going to be making $77,000 right off the bat, unfortunately. But over time and with more experience, your earnings tend to increase. Top industries obviously pay more, and I believe, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, the top industry the top industry was within government, and so for clinical psychologists working within government, their median annual income was $96,410. On the reverse end of that would be elementary and secondary schools, whether state, local, or private, at about $75,890. And all of my references. All right, and so now for my interview with Dr. Weaver. I hope you enjoy. Thank you. Okay, I'm Jennifer Taylor, and I'm here with Dr. Weaver, who is a clinical psychologist. All right, thank you again
you're
for meeting with
welcome.
me. All right, so what was your education like?
So education, like the doctoral part of the education, or
College,
just all of
doctoral,
it?
all of it, I guess, sure.
So I did my bachelor's in, I think it's a bachelor's, a BA in arts in behavioral science.
Oh, cool.
So it's that was a combination of psych, soc, and anthropology combined. And then I actually did like a certificate program in social work, because the university I went to didn't offer a master's in or a bachelor's in social work, but just a certificate. So I have like that social work background too, and then my master's is in marriage and family therapy, and I did that right out of my bachelor's program. Worked a lot, did 3,000 hours, got licensed in California.
Wow.
Yeah, and had a private practice and did that for a while until I went back for my doctorate, and so then I have actually it's a doctor of psychology degree, and eventually did all the work to get licensed.
Wow,
so
yeah.
So I'm a licensed psychologist in Oregon.
Cool. So was that 3,000 hours, was that through the state of California? Was that specific for them, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So initially, to get licensed at the master's level, it was the 3,000 hours, and then they actually had like a written exam and an oral exam.
Wow.
And then when I went back to school for my doctorate, then I had to do the 3,000 hours over,
Wow.
right, doing
Awesome.
different stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and that's all part of before you can get that
Get
degree
licensed.
or licensed.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's part of the degree, like
Mhm.
1,500 hours, I think, for both programs of mine were part of the degree. And then it's 1,500 post.
Okay,
degree.
that makes sense. Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
All right, cool. That's pretty awesome.
Mhm.
So why did you choose your major?
I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I somehow liked psychology. I kind of knew that from my first Psych 101 class.
Right, same here.
Yeah, and so I just kind of kept following what I thought I liked, not knowing where it would lead. I didn't like have an idea that I would want to go in for my doctorate at all. And I actually was going to head into social work and do a master's in social work because I thought that's what I wanted. And I applied for a program, Long Beach State, and did not get accepted, which is kind of the first thing I'd ever like applied for and didn't get accepted.
Oh no!
Yeah. And so it was that summer I just, for some reason, I had I think it was when they had print catalogs and
Nice.
print information about a marriage and family therapy program at Azusa Pacific University, and I just looked at the classes, and, like marital therapy, adolescent therapy, counseling theories, systems theory. I just looked at the classes, and I was like, oh my gosh, these sound super interesting.
Awesome.
So I applied, got accepted, and did that program.
Cool.
Full time, and then eventually I was actually trying to get pregnant. I couldn't get pregnant, so I thought, I'll do something I know I can do, which is go back to school.
Right.
And that's
there
why I
you
went
go.
for my doctorate.
Oh, awesome. Hey, that works. So,
I needed a life filler or
Right.
something, yeah. But actually, the faculty that I had at the master's level, they started a PsyD program, and I loved that faculty. And so, and I'm a Christian, and so for me, integrating kind of like the biblical understanding of the growth process with psychology and how those two, I think, fit really, really well together.
Yeah.
I wanted a program that could help me do that even more effectively, and so that's why that program.
Was that a Christian university? Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Awesome. Cool. Okay. Let's see. Do you feel that your education has properly prepared you for your job?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Great. That's kind of one of my worries. Like, am I gonna know enough to be able to go out there and like start helping people? So
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Undoubtedly. And I think if you get into the program that fits you, then you will be prepared. If it's not a program that fits you or what you're wanting to do,
I'm probably gonna know.
then it would make sense that you wouldn't be adequately prepared.
Right. That makes sense. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Any suggestions that you have for someone pursuing the same degree that you have?
Yeah, I think you've got to love this stuff. I mean, it's a huge investment. It's a lot of money, a lot of years, and so I mean, it's just if you got to be passionate about the research, just the work, getting into the trenches of people's lives, and what was that question exactly?
Any suggestions you have for someone pursuing the same
Oh
degree?
yeah, and do your own work.
Yeah.
Get your own therapy.
Yeah.
And just do lots of it. Because doing clinical work with people, we hit people's stuff, and then we literally don't know what to do with them because we haven't worked it out within ourselves.
Right.
And probably the scariest people are the ones that think they do know when they don't have it worked out. They come from more of a narcissistic perspective.
That's interesting.
Just do your own work, and if you love doing your own work, then you'll probably love helping other people do their work, and you'll bring that joy and that excitement, and just and the reality that this works, into the process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's going to be reassuring for them too. Like, oh, you know what you're doing. So,
Oh, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
cool. Let's see. What is one thing you learned along the way that was not expected? Such as maybe the amount of time it took, the workload, anything like that.
I didn't know how messed up I was.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. So an internal.
I mean, I knew the hard work.
Yeah.
Like that hard. I never like fear hard work or investment, time, that's a no-brainer for me. But yeah, no, when I went into my master's program, I really thought that if I could be in this position of being able to understand people and being able to help people, that I could sort of live out my calling, but I would be in that, like, I don't know, I like power.
Yeah, so
and
like
so I'd be in that
above.
power.
Right, I got you, yeah.
And in my master's program, actually, and I don't know if programs still can even require this, but my master's program, it was back in the 90s, it required us to do our own work. It was part of the program requirement. And we had to do, I don't know, so many hours of group therapy, and then we had to do so many hours of individual therapy.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool, though. That seems like it would be really important, though.
I don't know if I would have done it.
Right.
Until my life fell apart after that. If it wasn't required. I mean, I do sort of anything that's required because I'm a rule follower.
Like, I gotta do this.
And I want to do it the best.
Right,
like, the best client.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, the best client.
I excel at everything I do, even like group therapy,
right.
which is funny because, the more you try to excel at group therapy, the more people call you on your bullshit. So, that was a requirement. So learning about how messed up I was, and then ultimately my own unconscious process as to what led me into this field. But then I just constantly have been amazed at how much work I need to keep doing. Just because as I move through my career, do different jobs, meet with different people, different people trigger different stuff.
Oh, sure.
So it's like my clients always end up kind of being a mirror to me. And then also just, with my kids, I started when I didn't have kids, and then I had one, and went through an adoption with her, had another biologically, which was, crazy. And then as they've grown, and all the child development stuff I learned, it's like I'm putting it sort of into practice differently. And now that my daughter's a teenager, like, I have no idea what to do with teenagers. I don't want to work with teenagers anymore. So it's just every phase of my own life development brings up new stuff for me that I didn't know was in me. So I just keep doing my own work.
That's good, though. It's like a challenge, keep advancing, keep learning. Yeah, that's good. I definitely like that, always learning something, So that's cool. Alrighty. What career options are available for someone with your degree?
Well, definitely private practice. Part of my job here is I'm the director of the counseling center, so there's an administrative piece. So directing any sort of a counseling center, or like an administrative role. Supervision, so supervision for other folks to get licensed, and then teaching. That's one of the reasons I did sign up to get the terminal degree. Is you can teach at a master's level in certain programs, certain universities. You get paid a little bit more in some spaces if you have a terminal degree. I don't think EOU pays me more since I have a terminal degree, but I teach in a master's of counseling program at a different university, and so they definitely differentiate. So teaching, clinical work. I could do research if I wanted to, but once I finished my dissertation, I never wanted to do any more research again. That's not me. But administrative supervision, just a bunch of stuff.
And you kind of do
and I have a private practice.
Oh, you still have a private practice?
Yes.
Oh, that's awesome. Wow.
Yeah.
Cool. Wow. Definitely keep yourself busy then, huh? Yeah. That's cool though. Let's see. What are your work demands?
Show up. No.
You're right. Be on time.
Be ethical, be responsible. Just to do good clinical work. Intervene when there's a crisis. And in some ways, with this job, it's kind of looking out for the sort of the mental health of the campus. So, sometimes, faculty or staff will be having a hard time. And even though we don't counsel faculty and staff, a lot of times we'll just get a phone call and you know, a faculty member having a panic attack somewhere, and so they don't know who else to call, so they call the counseling center. And so so it's, you know, talk the person down or help them through it, refer, or, you know, consult, kind of a thing. So just take care of it. I don't know, everything clinically, and then of course the administrative piece.
And it never occurred to me that other teachers or faculty might turn to you for help or advice. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and we, you know, we're in a small area, and so there aren't a lot of resources, and so I work on building really good relationships, with faculty and staff. So not only, I mean, for the primary purpose of them referring students here, but yeah, sometimes, it's like I'm the person that they know.
Right.
So.
Do you think that would be the case at a larger university or in a larger city?
Not as
really.
Much, no, no, because most, I think, university, like faculty and staff would go to like HR.
Oh, okay.
Because we do have like an employee assistance program that provide mental health services for faculty and staff, but most don't know about that.
Oh, okay.
And so probably that small town mentality is you just call anybody who's remotely connected to, you know, what it is that you're experiencing and try to find out that way.
Well, at least they have someone, you know, what are the best aspects of your job?
Well, I literally get to watch people heal and grow, like, and transformationally change to where, you know, they came in and, again, you know, panic attacks, night terrors, I don't know, experienced something traumatic, not doing well in life, and we do some work and they're free from it. And not everybody gets free from everything, of course, but I definitely work a model of therapy where that does lead to transformational change. And so, I mean, some people I get to spend sort of all 4 years, so 5 years that they're here, because we don't have session limits at the counseling center. And so I can't see them every week, but I do get to walk with them through a longer process. And from when they were freshmen or whenever they come in to, you know, just to watch them graduate and to know that they're just a different person and they're free to kind of just be more of who they were, you know, created to be, and not, just know more of who they are and who they aren't. And so I literally, get to watch that all the time. And so rarely, like, a day goes by where I don't have an experience with somebody where it's like, oh my gosh, this is so cool.
That's cool.
And so, I mean, in my private practice as well. And so if I don't, you know, have a good clinical day here, I can have one of my private I've got it somewhere.
Nice.
And then I do teach a little bit, and so there's also that part of it too, of just helping people. And just doing this interview too. It's like, it's fun to, you know, folks who are interested in the field and newer at it, and just helping, you know, newer professionals develop. That supervision process is so fun. And Adam, our other psychologist, I supervised him to licensure, and so, like from where he was, and then where he was when he got licensed. It's just, it's super cool. So it's kind of like helping people grow up in a way, but it's a faster process than with my own kids, and it's way easier.
Like, I could just do this with them.
Oh, it doesn't work.
I know.
Tried.
Right.
Yes.
That's cool. So do you bring any of you'd said you were Christian and you had gone to a Christian university. Can you, or do you bring any of that here, or with the students that you see, or integrate any of that aspect?
Well, you know, it's, I mean, as a therapist, psychologist, I mean, we have to really take ownership of who we are as a person, and part of that just informs our theoretical orientation. You know, so I'm psychodynamic, I'm object relations, I'm, you know, just, I have a theoretical orientation, and all of that ultimately, because I did all my schooling, actually 10 years of, you know, it's all private Christian university education. It's all completely integrated with my understanding of what the Bible says about the healing and growth process. So that is just who I am fundamentally. But I work at a public institution,
Right.
and I can work with anyone. I work really, really well with just about anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
because I just love people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's about loving people. It's about connecting to them, and then ultimately, it's about helping them to get to where they want to go.
Sure.
And so I don't feel this like weird tension of like I gotta get them to go where I think they should go kind of a thing. So it's just definitely embedded in who I am. And then I definitely though believe that in some ways, I mean, we all have like a spiritual part of us.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you know, we use on our intake form, we use standard questions that many university counseling centers across the country use. And so they, you know, so we ask about, you know, kind of spiritual, you know, worldview and, you know, just kind of where what their spiritual framework is. So that we ask if they want to integrate that into their counseling. And some people do, some people don't.
Right.
But just addressing that part of a person. So like right up there, I have this first part of the Serenity Prayer because I'm a big 12-step fan.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, Niebuhr was a theologian. But the Serenity Prayer is welcome in lots of different places, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I do little stuff like that where, I mean, it's, and most of the time my clients sit here and I'm sitting there, you know. And so it's just something, you know, kind of for me to, you know, focus on. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of the 12-step program, and that's a very spiritual program too. It's not a Christian, I mean, it started off as a Christian program, but it's not a Christian program.
Right.
It's a spiritual program.
Yeah.
So I really, really buy into those spiritual principles of recovery.
Yeah.
And then I just happen to practice, my Christian faith.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, because I had gone to private school all throughout high school, grade school from third grade on, and then, you know, kind of learned some things about myself and my faith in high school, and so I'm definitely more spiritual than I am religious per se, and so it's just kind of interesting, you know, how you balance that, or, you know, how you might tap into that with a client or something, and
Well, and I think that's one thing in my master's program specifically. I had an instructor who, and again, the focus was on ethics and looking at sort of biblical ethics, but ethics in general, not. I mean, I had a couple of classes in, you know, Christian theology, but it wasn't like how to be a Christian counselor. I mean, this was an accredited program, so it was a counseling program, marriage and family program, but looking at biblical ethics. And so how do we treat people, and how do we live out our lives, how do we figure out our values, connect with them, help people live out their values, you know, in a way that's congruent with who they are. So so that's kind of my view of therapy too. And but his that one instructor, he always told us, because he was my biblical ethics instructor, he always said, a faith that is not your own is not worth having. And so he really encouraged that personal exploration and ownership, kind of like what you're talking about, where, I mean, I had to go through kind of that faith identity crisis place of, okay, I know this is, you know, what I've been taught. You know, that time my life was falling apart. It's like, it's not even working for me. So what do I do with a faith that doesn't even, or belief system that doesn't
not
work
working for me,
and doesn't seem to work for other people, and the
Mm-hmm.
people who it seems to work for, I don't even like and can identify with anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
so just really, wrestling with all of that. So that's cool that you've done that. And I think, and anybody who really hasn't is more concerning for me, because then they're not going to know how to help other people. Just, and others are probably going to be threatened by somebody's process, rather than just really encourage them to kind of lean into that struggle and that questioning and all of that.
My husband's family is Jehovah's Witness, so we've had a lot of issues where they just don't want to hear, like if it's not what their faith teaches, and we're just like, you know, we're just wanting you to be a little more open-minded, a little more accepting of us, you know, and they just, nope, they won't go there. They won't do that internal, like, processing of like, okay, let me figure out if this is working for me. Let me figure out myself. Like, they just, they're against that, if anything. So, really interesting, And it's like, what if you get a client like that, you know, so.
And actually, it's so interesting, because, I mean, we have a pretty strong sort of Christian, you know, kind of LDS population here, and so a lot of times they'll come in and they either have been referred to me because, you know, somebody knows of my background, or they learn about me in some way, or they, at some point, you know, in the course of us talking, you know, they'll ask about my faith background. And so the most difficult clients for me to work with actually are not ones that are like radically different than what I, you know, they espouse values that I completely disagree with, but it's the ones that are just so rigid in their belief system that it's like you can't work with rigidity because they're not showing up to participate in the process. And so it's like, okay, when I think that a person's depression is embedded in their rigidity, their rigid religious framework, and I start poking at that, and they don't want that. It's like, no, God is good. That area of my life is good. Like, I just want help with my depression. It's like, well, you're splitting those two, and I think they're more connected. But yeah, so those are actually the more difficult clients to work with.
I think that was the next question too. What are the worst aspects of your job?
Okay.
So I guess.
Yeah. Another, I guess, worst aspects. I mean, it's hard work. It's draining.
Sure.
And it's exhausting in a weird sort of way. 'Cause I like hard labor. Like,
Sure.
I don't know, I worked out in the fields when I was in college and in the summers, and I don't know, I'm a really, really hard worker. I love yard work. I love, you know, like I can be hours doing manual labor kinds of stuff. And so I know what it's like, and I was an athlete, you know, into college, and so I know what it's like to work hard and get physically tired. But this is like, okay, I've just been sitting around all day. I'm not even aware of being sort of traumatized or carrying a lot of what my clients share, but I'm absolutely exhausted. And so, for me, the most difficult part of my job, and this is just probably part of my life in general, is just taking care of myself. Because it doesn't come natural for me. And it's just generally hard to do. That just means I have a drop in.
Cool. Okay. Let's see. What advice would you give to someone thinking about pursuing the same job you have?
So definitely do your own work and do lots of it. Because again, if you don't like to do your own work, I don't know why you would sign up to do this work. Like that just doesn't make sense to me. The other would be to just, I guess along those lines, but getting to know, you know, themselves really, really well, to know what they're really passionate about. Because the reality, I think, is a lot of times counselors get into this field, you know, in an attempt to heal ourselves.
Sure.
I mean, we don't even know we're doing it. And so it's that unconscious, you know, attraction process, you know, to the career. And so bringing all that information up to the surface is really important. You know, it's spring term, and so like one population of students we see in spring term more than any other term are seniors coming in, and even like in a nursing program, you know, like in a specified program where they're about to graduate and they're having like, I'm saying, oh shit moments where they're like, oh shit, what am I doing? Like, I don't want to be a nurse. Like, I don't like this area that I'm studying, and it's either graduate school or it's get a job, and I just want to go work at Starbucks or like I don't want to do anything in this field. And so those are sad moments for me because, you know, they've had this unconscious attraction process to that, you know, career, and they don't know what it's about for them, and the closer they get to actually needing to sort of embrace it and live it out, they're realizing it's like they get closer to that reality that that's not who they are. So you know, just explore yourself, figure out what your passion is, get to know yourself, and get out all the voices, the clutter, that other people's expectations and projections, you know, onto you that would make you think that this is who you are when it's really not, or you think that this is what you want to do. Because I don't know, I grew up thinking that if I could do it, that probably meant I should do it. Whatever I was good at, then that was what I would make a decision to do something like that. And we can be good at a lot of things,
Sure.
but it doesn't mean we need to spend, you know, thousands and thousands of dollars
Right.
and time and
Right.
investing in doing that.
Mm.
So just because somebody's good at something, does you know, they're good at listening to people, doesn't mean they, you know,
Right.
you sign up for be a counselor or
Right.
social worker or whatever.
Yeah, I was raised by my grandparents, and my grandma, she's always pushing me. She's like, "Oh, you've always liked, you know, doing hair and makeup." It's like, yeah, I love that, but that's not what I'm
Yeah.
passionate about. Like, I'm so intrigued with
Right.
psychology and the brain,
Yeah.
and that's what I'm gonna do, you know. So, and I
Yeah.
get it all the time. Like, people are like, "Oh, I love your makeup. You should do makeup. Do my makeup." And I'm like, "Okay, yeah, sure,
Yeah.
but you know, like, that's not really
Right.
the big deal that I want to pursue, kind of
Exactly.
thing."
Yeah. And you can always do something on the side.
Mm,
but
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Just because you're gonna. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we get that kind of advice from people.
Exactly.
And
yeah.
then we think that that's
Right.
direction to go. So that's cool that you know
Mhm.
the difference.
Yeah. I kind of figured that out.
Yeah.
Last question.
Uh-huh.
What else do you think we should know about your profession?
You know, it's really, unfortunately, really expensive to get a degree.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And once you get the degree, it doesn't count for anything, even at the doctoral level, unless you only want to teach.
Mm-hmm.
But you still have to get licensed.
Mm-hmm.
And there isn't like a national licensing process for psychologists. It's state dependent.
Yeah.
And the same is true at the master's level. Every state has their own requirements and stuff, although like K-CREP at the master's level is accrediting programs, which helps people, it's easier for people to get licensed if they go through, you know, an accredited program.
Yeah.
So my program was accredited by the American Psychological Association. So any state that I go to that I need to submit my transcripts, you know, to, and I'm trying to get licensed, coming from an accredited program is critical, I think.
That's good to know.
Yeah, yeah. So, but it's really expensive, and it doesn't pay well in and of itself. I mean, you can work your way into sort of a practice, and I mean, you can definitely make a living at it. But like even, you know, like University Counseling Center, you know, it's just, I mean, I have a private practice to supplement what I make here. It's, yeah, so it doesn't, the payout isn't the best, especially the master's level. So, so yeah, I think that that's just a reality. So you can get the degree, you're gonna have student loans, or you know, pay for it as you go, whatever. And then you still have to get licensed, which usually involves a lot of free or hardly, you know, any money kind of work. And then yeah, so you really have to love it and have it be a part of your life, in an integrated way to make it work.
That's all the questions I have. So
Perfect.
thank you so
You're
much. I
welcome.
really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Welcome.
Yeah, definitely learned some things. So yeah, definitely, you know, you got to be passionate about it, definitely. And I think not necessarily, like I know a lot of people tend to, oh, I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to be a lawyer, I'm going to be a psychologist, thinking, oh, this is going to pay fantastic. Like that's their motivating factor, when, you know, the reward should be helping people, and, you know, so.
Yeah, there really need to be other ones, unless maybe, I don't know, maybe doctors and lawyers do make enough to
Maybe.
where it's
yeah.
not. It's some of the other stuff.
Sure, right.
It's not a big deal, but psychologists, yeah, and even, you know, teaching in institution, it's, yeah, it's, you know, they're not three-figure or six-figure jobs for sure.
Yeah, gotta be
So.
more realistic about, you know, what to expect, and if that's really the right fit for you, and doing it for the right reasons. So
Yeah.
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 Awesome. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.